Agnes, Pat, Pfleuger. I'm 96.
What did your mom and dad do for a living?
Well, they emigrated from England when I was an early age, and they went to Australia.
Okay.
So I was New Guinea.
Okay.
And they, towards the end of his life, my father was a copra plantation owner.
Was it lucrative?
Yes, very much so,
Yeah.
until World War II.
Right.
The Japanese took the island.
Okay.
I was in England,
Okay.
so I wasn't taken. My mother was dead, and I had a brother in the Australian army. He was in Egypt, and I was in England, and working in England. I went to school in Belgium.
Okay.
When I graduated in Belgium, went back to London, and I was supposed to join my father in British New Guinea.
Mm-hmm.
And but the war broke out. 1939,
Right.
the war broke out, and they cancelled all the shipping to bring the troops in,
Right.
to bring the troops to Europe.
So what was your life like in 1930? You're 19 years old, you're in school. What was the feeling there?
I had graduated from Belgium, and I was working and living with my grandmother in London, in the East End of London.
Yeah.
Oh dear, that's where the
The
bombing
worst
was.
part.
Oh yeah.
And I was scheduled to go back to New Britain to join my dad. But as like I said, they cancelled all the passengers. They were bringing in troops from Australia and Canada, bringing them into England. So I was stuck for the war.
Okay.
My grandmother at that time was in her 60s.
Okay.
And she was real feisty. She was a typical Londoner. About the first thing they did was provide us with bomb shelters. Each house had a bomb shelter, and it was usually in the backyard. It was installed in the backyard.
What was the name of that shelter? It was kind of like a
Anderson. Anderson.
Anderson?
Yeah, Anderson shelter.
Right.
You called them something else. What did you call them? They were corrugated steel.
Kind of like a Quonset hut. Small Quonset hut.
That's what it is, Quonset hut.
So you installed those in your backyard.
According to the size of the family. It was just my grandmother and me, so it was quite a small one. We used it quite a bit though. But they weren't very pleasant, they weren't very good. They weren't leak-proof and damp, and they weren't ventilated inside, so you always had the wet walls. I could think of a million things in the bomb shelter.
When did you go in there?
Every time the sirens went. The sirens were located at the local town fire halls, and the signal would be one long blast, like a whale. Ooh, one thing. The all clear. When it was all clear, it would be a short blast.
A bunch of them. When that happened, when you heard that, you then went to.
Well, you picked up what you would need if you were going to trapped in the shelter for a length of time. Like sometimes if you were having your supper, it was always at night, mostly at night. You picked up your supper and took it with you into the shelter. Blankets, we had hot tea, we always took tea.
So British.
Yeah.
And
then we made, sometimes the all clear would go after a couple of hours. Then we'd creep back in and go to bed. But if it lasted all night, we stayed all night till breakfast. Well, I was working in an office at that time, and if we were trapped while we were at work, sometimes we spent all night at the office. So you had to wait for that all clear. While I was in the service, an incendiary bomb. You know, incendiary bombs, they were dropped to set fires. And we had one through the roof of our house, and it landed on my brother's pool table. He had a pool table. Burned all the felt off the table before they put it out.
wow.
Then we had what we called air raid wardens. They were certain responsible men who were not in the forces, older men, and they were in charge of blocks of houses. They took care of all getting people safe and making them stay in the house.
At some point, actually get into the British service.
Oh, what happened was they drafted the women for the first time. They did that to try to replace the men that were being lost. And you had to be between the age of 19 and I think it was 25. Well, I happened to be 19 at the time. Well, we had to go. I had to leave my job, and they interviewed me, and they asked me which branch of the service I wanted to go into. And I said the Air Corps. And they said, you can't go into the Air Corps, because I was a stenographer. And I knew how to write too. But they said, you have to go in the army. So I ended up in the Royal Artillery.
Really?
And I was always stationed on an anti-aircraft gun site. And I was a stenographer for the commanding officer, who was a major. I had to type the daily orders, what we called the daily orders. That was the schedule for the day, something like we have here. Every day it was, you know. And I also was in charge of the rations. I was the ration clerk. Every day I had to know the number of rations needed for the day. I had to laugh. If a guy was going to be out on leave for half a day, you had to have half a person. Oh, gee. I did, but mostly I was the typist for the major.
Right.
Stenographer.
Now you're at an anti-aircraft base.
Yes.
And
no, it was an anti-aircraft. We had two guns. They were 4.5 millimeter guns.
Okay.
And we had two sites. We were the headquarters site, and there was what they called the off site. I was at headquarters with the major.
Was there much activity where you were located?
Oh, gosh, yeah. We were always posted. Our battery was moved periodically. Okay. And we went all around the East Coast where all the bombing was.
As to how the war was going, I mean, seemingly every day.
We never predicted anything. We did day by day.
What did Winston Churchill mean to you folks?
Oh, he was our idol. and he still is my idol. He was fabulous, believe me. I never met him in person, but he was stationed mostly in London. He had an underground headquarters in London, in the city. So we never saw him because we were always in the countryside, because we were on the beaches.
Did because radio was your main communication?
Yes, at that time.
Did Churchill give as many speeches as we remember today? I mean, did you hear him like weekly?
He did, and they were always broadcasts on the radio. Of course, we didn't have TV.
Right.
And people just waited for his words when he came on at night. They'd all sit around the radio waiting for what he's going to say. And I would say that he was the main thing that kept us going. We depended on what he was going to tell us. And he never pulled any punches. He never made it sound good when it wasn't good.
We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until, in God's good time, the new world, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old.
An armistice with Germany?
Well, after Chamberlain, we didn't try.
Right.
No, they said, let them have it, you know. We had to. What could we do? We were expecting them to land on our coast.
The Allied forces landed in France early this morning. I watched the first landing barges hit the beach exactly
Broad daylight, the tremendous armada of 4,000 ships of all design, size, and shape began to move out of the British ports and across the choppy rolling channel. And at the appointed time, the Elsies moved on, many abreast, and spewed their men onto the beaches, the first to set foot on European soil since the tragedy of Dieppe.
That the troops were all coming through all over England for something, but we didn't know what it was going to be, an invasion. And at the time, the DDay.
Well, let's go back. Now let's stay with D-Day. I missed that. Talk about D-Day.
Oh.
D-Day. You know, this is all what you were talking about. All the troops coming into England and the invasion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming from all over England, and the roads were nothing but vehicles, but loads and loads of tanks and stuff. And I was in the artillery. I was on a gun site in the middle of England, in the Midlands. And we knew something was up. We didn't know what it was. We knew there was something in the wind that they were going to finally move. And we suspected something the night before. I was in a pub.
Of course.
Yeah, I was in a pub and the rumours were flying. Something's coming up, something's coming up. Sure enough, the next day, they came past our camp along the roads. Nothing but vehicles. We knew something was, it was the invasion.
And finally, now we're in the offensive.
Oh, we went crazy. We were waiting for that. We got fed up with just, being bombed and couldn't do anything about it.